Welcome everyone to our first Climate Innovation Fund grant program webinar. And today we're focused on one of our three focus areas, which is Building Better and Retrofitting Wiser. Quickly, I'm just going to introduce myself. My name is Mike Malross, and I am the Program Director of the Climate Innovation Fund at Alberta Ecotrust. I'm joined today with some other Alberta Ecotrust staff members, including Jessica Lajoie and Stephanie Drozda. Both of them are program specialists. Stephanie works in the Edmonton area and Jessica works in Calgary. And we also are joined by Simon Irving, who's our grant program manager. So today we're going to talk a little bit about the grant program itself, but we're also going to hear from Hai-Tu Yu. He's from Landmark Group of Companies, and Mark Sandborough from Building Up. They're going to present a couple of project case studies to really just get your juices flowing and understand our program and look at some potential things that can be done in the building sector with respect to accelerating emissions reductions. I do want to just let you know that the session is recorded, and this is so that we can utilize this into the future and provide it to other people so that they can also be made aware of our grant program and also our keynote speakers. If you have questions about the content, I just want to point you to the Q&A box. So along the bottom in Zoom, I'm sure it's not new to you at this point, but there are two boxes. One's the chat box and one's the Q&A box. When you're actually asking questions about the grant content, or if you have maybe questions to the keynote speakers as well, we can start to try to answer those too. Please put those in the Q&A box and use the chat, of course, if you just want to introduce yourself and talk to the others and just maybe say something in general. So Stephanie, this is the, if you want to advance it to this is the agenda today. I'm not going to go over that in detail, but I'm going to just talk a little bit about a land acknowledgement. And in this last year spent working remotely and gathering through the screens, it's really important, more so than ever, to remember and acknowledge the land and traditional territories that we're working from. Personally, I'm joining from Edmonton, as is Stephanie, and we are in Treaty 6 territory, and this is the traditional gathering place for diverse Indigenous peoples, including the Cree, Blackfoot, Nakota Sioux, Iroquois, Dene, Ojibwe, Saulteaux, and Anishinaabe, Inuit, and many others. City of Edmonton is also home to Métis Nation of Alberta Region 4. Our other Alberta Ecotrust members are joining today from the traditional territories of the Blackfoot and the people of the Treaty 7 region in southern Alberta, which includes the Siksika, and the Piikani, the Kainai, the Tsuut'ina, and the Stoney Nakoda First Nations. The City of Calgary is also home to Métis Nation of Alberta Region 3. As we collectively engage in our work to support a low carbon future, I invite you to consider how we can learn from and honor the traditions and the people who were here before us, and also who may come after us. So give it some thought, and we don't talk about these things just out of some need to jump through a hoop. We want to seriously consider how we are moving forward with reconciliation and acknowledging the land that we live on. Is one of the ways that we can do that. Moving to slide 4. So this one is a really interesting new technology we're trying. In the chat box, you will see a link to a software package called Padlet. So hopefully someone will be putting that through right now. And this is a way that we can foster collaboration. We set up a board here, and virtually you can leave your project business card. We're trying this out as a way to create a networking opportunity. Some of these webinars seem faceless, and it's difficult to interact like we used to in person. So we're hoping this can be an effective way to basically share who you are with the others that are in the room. You can find the link to our Padlet board in the chat now. And once on the board, you will find a pink circle with a plus symbol. I think it's towards the bottom right. And simply left click on that circle to add a post. You can complete the post with your information, your organization name, email, and idea for a project if you're open to finding possible project partners or collaborators. This Padlet board will open during the webinar, and it will be open throughout the webinar, and we will send out the link if you'd like to populate it with project ideas afterwards. It will remain open until July 1st. So, and actually, you know, I encourage you to take a look at that and see who's on that board, and definitely follow up on your own accord with individuals that might be synergistic to some of the thinking that you're doing. So that's all really for the logistics. I'm going to turn it over to Stephanie, and you're in her capable hands to facilitate the rest of the day, and I'm looking forward to it. We'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, Mike. So I'll just start out with a brief overview of Alberta Ecotrust and the Climate Innovation Fund. Alberta Ecotrust was founded in 1991, and we're an environmental charity that continues to be a critical source of funding and capacity building for the province's environmental nonprofit community. Alberta Ecotrust became a Low Carbon Cities Canada Centre last year, and the establishment of the Climate Innovation Fund is a natural fit in Ecotrust's suite of programming. The Climate Innovation Fund delivers programming in Calgary and Edmonton with a $44 million one-time cash endowment provided by the federal government through a partnership with FCM. As an LC3 centre, we work collaboratively with the other centres across Canada, with the Federation of Canadian Municipalities and our local governments in Edmonton and Calgary. We take on a nimble accelerator role, complementing and advancing the leadership work undertaken by the municipalities. Our approach is evidence-based and data-driven. We focus on the major urban emission sources in Calgary and Edmonton, the building and transportation sectors. Both cities have a very similar emission profile, though Edmonton has a slightly larger industrial footprint. We strive to educate, train, build capacity, and develop policy while convening partnerships and amplifying the work of our other climate programming in our communities through our strategic projects and programming. Through our grant program, we fund local climate mitigation projects in Calgary and Edmonton, covering a diverse range of activities from technology demonstration to collective impact and policy advancement. And our third arm is our direct investment arm, which focuses on financing, credit enhancement, and impact investing. So I'm going to jump right into the details of the Climate Innovation Fund grant program, starting out with our eligible recipients. So for the program, eligible recipients include qualified Canadian donees and nonprofit organizations. This includes charities, community associations, nonprofit groups, industry or business associations, First Nations undertaking projects within Calgary and Edmonton, school boards, post-secondary institutions, and the cities of Calgary and Edmonton. Private and for-profit organizations can be eligible, provided they partner with a charitable or nonprofit organization as the lead applicant for a project. And adjacent communities with regional projects that meet the project selection criteria should contact us to determine and discuss project eligibility. For eligible projects, the projects must result in direct project level and or projected greenhouse gas emissions reductions at scale over 20 years, and projects will be evaluated on this metric. The activities and benefits must be accrued either in Calgary or Edmonton. Projects have to have a minimum of 20% matching funds, and these funds can come from multiple sources, including additional funding from the federal government. However, federal government funds will not count towards the 20% matching requirement, and matching funds cannot come from the Federation of Canadian Municipalities. Non-cash contributions such as salaries can be used as matching funds provided they are an audible expense. Projects must also align with the respective city's climate plans and or the goal of achieving carbon neutrality. Projects should clearly articulate a pathway to scale up of the initiative and have community benefits that will be accrued in addition to just the emissions reduction. So we're looking at economic, social equity, and environmental co-benefits. Project end date is a maximum of 24 months after the start date, but of course, proposals with a shorter project timeline would be accepted. Ineligible projects, so anything without a measurable or projected greenhouse gas emission reduction, broad public awareness, education, behavior change campaigns and courses, including K-12 classroom education, but education and outreach could still be part of the project, of course. Redistributing the funding as grants or rebates, any marketing, surveying, or advertising campaign, single one-off technology deployment without an approach to scaling up across a demographic or a sector, and community gardens. So these are the three focus areas, in addition to an overarching area that we focus on our work, as well as our grant program funding areas. So each focus area has sub-priorities within them, and those will be the target of our grant funding this year. So in addition to the overarching, those are our three focus areas, and our various webinars this spring will be providing an opportunity to dive deeper into each of these areas. And today is obviously our Building Better and Retrofitting Wiser, so we'll chat a little bit more about those sub-priorities later on. Our funding levels for this year are $425,000 in Calgary and $552,500 in Edmonton. Now, to calibrate the grant call, we are anticipating funding requests in the range of $10,000 to $50,000. Alberta Ecotrust will accept applications for potential higher levels of funding if the project meets or exceeds the evaluation criteria across multiple categories and has a high likelihood of scaling up and being replicated. We just ask that applicants discuss the project and need for the higher funding level with our grant team prior to submitting. Just looking at the timeline for 2021. So we have our next webinar on May 17th, which will cover moving on mobility. Our June 16th webinar will cover our decarbonization and renewable energy focus area. And then our expressions of interest will open July 1st. So your expression of interest must meet the basic eligibility criteria, and you'll submit your EOI through Alberta Ecotrust grant portal. Our staff will evaluate using the evaluation criteria detailed in the application scorecard. And based on this evaluation, a short list of applicants will be invited to submit a full application. The full application will require additional project and budget information, and applicants will work directly with Alberta Ecotrust to quantify their greenhouse gas emissions reduction. An interview may also be a requirement of the full application stage. The final decision-making authority will be delegated to our grant selection committee in each city. They will evaluate the projects using our criteria, and the committee is made up of representatives from our Climate Innovation Fund Executive Advisory Committee and additional community members. We will provide feedback to all unsuccessful applicants as well. And so based on those full applications, we expect to have funding awarded in October and November. So those basic project requirements, you must be an eligible recipient, must leverage 20% non-federal funding. The project has to align with the respective city's climate plan and or the goal of achieving carbon neutrality. The project should fall into a SIF focus area and sub-priority, and you must demonstrate staff capacity in terms of staff and resources to complete the project successfully. Finally, for the evaluation criteria, so the four kind of buckets of our evaluation are greenhouse gas emissions reduction. So this is a reduction potential at the project level or at scale. And this category has the highest weighting out of all four. The scale potential of the project. So identifying the scale pathways that will be employed or integrating an approach to widespread adoption of the project, the ability to replicate the project or the concept and accelerate the scale up and avoidance of carbon lock-in associated with it. Co-benefits, including jobs and economic benefits, social and community benefits like well-being, safety, and improving mental and physical well-being, improving access to public health, etc. And environmental benefits like promoting and protecting biodiversity, reducing air pollution, regenerating habitat, reducing waste, and other benefits similar. The last category is equity. And so this is going to be looking at how the project considers distributional, procedural, and or recognitional equity dimensions. And so we have more details and the application scorecard available on our grant website, which we will share the link at the end. And that covers our grant basics. I'm going to pass it over to Jessica, who will talk a little bit more about our focus area.
Great. Thank you so much, Stephanie. I'm off mute, so hopefully everyone can hear me okay. So as you know, today is our focus area talking about building better, retrofitting wiser. And last year, prior to Stephanie and myself joining Ecotrust, there was a lot of work done exploring these categories and coming up with them. And we've defined a couple sub-priorities since they're so broad and there's so much work to be done. We've tried to narrow down a little bit what we're hoping to focus on as priorities this year. So we can go to the next slide. So specifically under Building Better, Retrofitting Wiser, two sub-priorities we've looked at are what we're calling opportunity identification and aggregation and whole building retrofitting. And these hopefully address some of the barriers that we see to addressing emissions, GHG emissions in the building sector. So the first one is around how do we find those opportunities for energy efficiency and how do we aggregate them, bring them together in big enough bundles that they're financeable potentially by private financing or other programs. And the second one, whole building retrofitting, is instead of looking at incremental changes in buildings, how do we really start to drive towards net zero or net zero ready when it comes to looking at building retrofits? Next slide, please. So some examples of eligible projects. I don't need to read through all of these, but essentially just more specifics on what I just mentioned about the two sub-priority areas. So they could take many forms, of course, but for example, using technology or digital methods to look at those opportunity identification and aggregation is something that we're interested in. And again, that financing that might come from another source, or creating those opportunities in a way that is appealing to finding financing, because we really saw that as a gap. And then for the whole building retrofitting, that could take a whole slew of different aspects, from studies to how do we monitor and verify, measure and verify the results of some of these efforts. And again, maybe it's skills training for how do we create a workforce that is ready to start retrofitting buildings on a systematic, holistic looking basis and looking towards net zero. So yeah, there's lots of opportunity within these two sub-priorities to have your projects be eligible for the funding. Next slide, please. So as Stephanie mentioned, one of the key criteria that we will be evaluating projects on is the greenhouse gas or GHG impact. And I don't know what the capacity of everyone on this call is. So I wanted to start with just some basics around how greenhouse gas emissions are quantified. So one of the key concepts in greenhouse gas impact calculating is the idea of a baseline and the project. So what we're really trying to do is determine what would have happened without intervention in terms of a project, and how did that intervening project change the course of what emissions would have occurred. So we call that the baseline or business as usual emissions, and the hopefully reduced emissions after the intervening project is done. And that gap between what would have happened and what is occurring is how we decide what the greenhouse gas impact of a project is. Next slide, please. So there's a few other concepts we want to talk about, and we are understanding that this might be something new that project proponents are thinking about, and maybe they haven't had a lot of experience in quantifying greenhouse gas emissions, and that's fair. We are here to help, and we are learning as we go as well. So I'm excited to be on this journey with everybody as we really prioritize the GHG or greenhouse gas impact of our projects. So we'll be looking at identifying, or what we'll be asking for project proponents to at least bring to us in some level in their projects, is what is that pathway to reduction? So we know for buildings, based on the inventory that the City of Calgary puts together, the primary reason that buildings have such a high greenhouse gas impact is two things: their electricity consumption in the building, as well as their natural gas consumption. So obviously, you know, on-site electricity doesn't produce greenhouse gas emissions, but we have a grid, an electrical grid intensity factor that we apply to try to capture what those upstream emissions from natural gas, from coal, from various production facilities, what they contribute to climate emissions. So we're going to ask people, what aspect of a building's operations are you looking to tackle? So what is your pathway to achieving reductions? And the next thing is, what is the scale of that impact? So again, understanding that you know, technical data might not be available if this is something new or something that hasn't been tried before. But even if you could come to us with an estimated percentage of what you think a reduction of electricity and natural gas consumption could be, we can work with that. Or if there's a bit more previous data that you can build on, or previous projects, knowing what the savings in electricity and natural gas specifically before and after a project can help identify or help us calculate what the impact would be. Now the next piece, so that would be on kind of a per building or a per project basis. But Stephanie also talked about the need for scale up in these projects. And this is really where I think our grant program is trying to differentiate itself a little bit, is we're very interested in projects that can result in a bigger impact beyond the life of the project. So for greenhouse gas emissions, we want to know what is the market size, or what is the potential if your project were to be replicated across a whole sector. So for example, and again, we will help with these calculations because it's not easy to always identify what that market or scale up could be. But an example that I think is easy to wrap our heads around is the residential sector. So if you're looking at a project to help people reduce the electricity and natural gas use in homes, then we have really good data from the City of Calgary census in particular, and other places, around how many homes exist in Calgary. And we're looking at getting even more detailed in terms of maybe age of homes, square footage, and things like that down the road. So there's definitely ways to say what is the potential total market size or scale size that could be impacted through a project. Next slide, please. So again, kind of around how we are proposing to determine the GHG impact. Just to repeat, there are direct emissions from a project, as well as two types of calculations anyway. If the project has a direct emission associated with it, we can calculate that, as well as that potential scale, the size of the prize, if you will. We've also been working on a user-friendly, call it calculator, or maybe an estimator tool that will include all the assumptions that you'll need in terms of emission factors. Again, we're collecting data around the types of buildings and the emissions data that the cities already collect. So we'll have all that for you. And other considerations when you're looking at your project, these are just, you know, things that are part of how we do greenhouse gas quantification. So if you're doing a project that focuses on electricity reduction, that's great, because as we know, Alberta's electrical grid does create quite a few greenhouse gases, especially compared to other places. But the forecast for that grid over time is that there will be more renewables, coal will go offline, it'll get greener over time. So an electricity reduction project will see the most GHG benefit in the first year, and it'll actually kind of have a reduced GHG benefit over the years. Not a bad thing, just something to consider when we're looking at projects, because we do want, you know, the biggest bang for our buck. As well, we've been asked by the methodology we've been subscribed to does put a premium on near-term GHG emissions, so projects that reduce, that can be done sooner or more quickly, that tackle GHG or reduce GHGs in the nearer term, will be prioritized over ones that might have a longer rollout or take longer to implement. As well, it can get very complicated if we start talking about life cycle impacts. So these will not be calculated. We'll be looking at a discrete building, say, as the project, but we will use our best judgment if there's a proposal that seems to either shift emissions to another jurisdiction or another area. We'll definitely be cognizant of that, but there will be no life cycle complicated calculation being done. And again, Ecotrust is here to help applicants with this work. Next slide. This is just some screenshots of the estimator that we've been working on. So we're still in the process of testing it, but we hope it will be ready very soon, and that we can start using it with some of the projects that all you lovely people will be bringing to us. So with that, that is the end of my portion. So I'm going to actually pass it back to Mike to introduce our first case study. Thank you.
Hello, everybody. Sorry, I was just answering questions there, so I'm just going to get caught up. Okay, so thanks so much, Stephanie and Jessica. A lot of questions were coming in. Hopefully we're answering them as we go in the Q&A, but I encourage everybody to follow up with the overall grants team as well, particularly if you have very detailed questions about expenses and eligible program expenses. It's probably best we have an offline conversation on those specific detail items. So I would like to introduce the first of our guest speakers. We wanted to provide you some tangible examples of projects that could spark some inspiration. And today we actually have two speakers. And our first one is Hai-Tu Yu. He's the research and development lead for the Landmark group of companies. And Dr. Yu has obtained his PhD in construction, engineering, and management from the University of Alberta in 2010 and joined Landmark Group to lead its R&D department. As a champion of Landmark's net zero energy roadmap, he actively engaged in the design and construction of 28 net zero energy homes, over 50 net zero energy ready homes, and more than 200 energy efficient solar homes. Landmark Homes Canada is now an industrial leader in building energy efficiency and sustainability. And I'm proud to say I actually live in a Landmark home. I'll pass it to Hai-Tu to tell us about his project, looking at net zero energy and net zero ready multi-unit residential buildings and their impact on the utility grid. Thanks, Hai-Tu.
Hello, everyone. Here's Hai-Tu. Thank you, Mike, for a really good introduction. So I don't need to spend time introducing myself. So can you go to the next slide? Yeah, before going to the specific project, I'd like to provide some background information about Landmark's NonZero Journey. So we started our first net zero show home in Calgary in 2012, and then the following year we built actually one of the lottery home in Edmonton is a net zero. Is kind of larger a luxury home. And then we also build 14 townhomes. They both are in large park in Edmonton. And then finally in 2014, we have some customers. They would like to buy net zero single family homes. So in that year, we sold our first customer home in both Edmonton and Calgary. In 2017, we raised one of our first affordable net zero show home. For that time, it probably is first in Canada. Our customer can buy a single family net zero home under $400,000. So for that is a big hit. And then in the following year, we built another 2 show homes. Probably most people knows the new building code is a step code. So just released last year. There are 5 steps. So the top step, the tier 5, is they call it a net zero energy ready home. So by 2030, all new homes built in Canada should achieve a tier 5. So for that's why in the last 2 years, our focus changed from net zero home to net zero energy ready home. In last year, we built our entire community. It's a rental community in West Edmonton. It's include 40 townhome units. And then we achieved net zero energy ready standard. So could you go to the next slide? Yeah, for that is a new project we are currently working on. It's also a townhome project. So the location is in Southeast Edmonton. We can see the map there. So it's in Maple Crest subdivision. Is kind of close to the intersection of Whitemud and Anthony Hyundai. So it's also a rental project. The entire project has 104 units. We will upgrade one building to net zero ready level, and all other buildings will be still using landmark townhome standard specs, which is about 10 to 15% better than the building code in terms of energy performance. Go to next slide, please. Yeah, here is the design of that net zero energy ready building. Is a 9-plex, includes 7 walkout townhomes and 4 stack units. The table shows energy modeling results. So you can see over there, compared to code to the same house built to the code standard. In this building, the energy consumption will about 43% less than the code reference building. Probably if you're familiar with the energy modeling, you will know the energy consumption of the house in the modeling. There are 2 parts of it. One part is we call it a base load. It's mainly decided by the lifestyle of occupancy. So we have no control on that part. Actually, for the townhome unit, for that accounts for about half of the total energy consumption of the building. So mainly we can control is the other half is the space heating, hard water heating. So if we only consider that half, actually the energy saving will be about 80%. So we cut about 80% of the space heating and hard water heating in terms of energy consumption. And then the next slide, please. So here is in order to achieve the project goal, we also install a small 2 kilowatt solar PV system in this house, in that building, and also another standard building. The purpose is kind of we want to we try to see what is the interaction between the energy consumption and solar generation. Because now a lot of homes we build, probably we installed, we almost built more than 200 of solar homes. But a common question the homeowner will ask is, oh, it seems the solar PV generation is less than what we tell them, what we predict. But the truth is, actually, there's a percentage of the solar power was used on site. When the solar power, when the solar PV panel generates the electricity, the first it will be used on site to offset the consumption at that time. So, but the problem is we don't really know how much, what is the percentage of the solar generation will be used on site. So for that is in this project we try to see build a model, kind of simulate what is the how much of what the percentage of that generation was used. Okay, go to next slide. Yeah, here is how we will monitoring monitoring the consumption. So if we can see on the dot there, the red dot is means we will monitor the electricity consumption. So you can see the building. I can't control, but one of the buildings, the Nightplex, we will monitor both electricity and natural gas consumption, and but that is for the building upgraded to NonZero ready performance. And we also monitor another building is the standard spec building. So we want to compare what is the impact of the building to achieve NonZero ready standard, or what is the difference between two buildings. So mainly we will monitor the energy consumption for space heating, for hot water, for HRV, all those specific purpose. We also, because for the both building, in terms of townhomes, in the townhomes we use a new technology. We call it dual fuel hybrid, space and water combined heating system. But that means we will use natural gas to have a tankless water heater, and then for that hot water will supply both the hot water used inside the home and also the space heating. Now we want to make clear how much energy consumption will be used for all those purposes. So, and the other side, you can see the project schedule. Now the block 3, which is the NonZero ready building, we already start the foundation, and then the building will be erected in 2 weeks. But because probably you know in Landmark, with all our buildings are prefabricated in our partner AccuBuild. So all the wall panels, floor panel, entire building will panelize and build in the factory and go and ship to the site to do the erection. So the building will erect in May, and then the procession will be in October. So yeah, the references building will be 1 month later. Go to next slide, please. Here is the project goal. Project goal, we have twofold. One is for sure we want to demonstrate affordable and replicable solution for MERP to achieve net zero energy ready performance. But that's one of the main purpose of this project, because the builders, the industry, when they see the new building code, they want to know how we can get there. What is the cost if we want to build a building to achieve net zero energy ready? It means the tier 5 of the new building code. So for that will be one of the main purpose for this project. Actually is funded by CHBA Net Zero Energy Housing Council. So they work with RCAN, try to collect the costing, timing, and also energy data from all those buildings. So we are part of that project. And also on provincial level, SSRIA also provide funding to this project, mainly on the solar PV system and energy monitoring. So that is come to the second goal, is to go back, please. Yeah, please. Yeah, the second goal to develop a generic simulation tool. So in order, because in the past we normally to build houses, net zero home or net zero energy ready home, it probably kind of one home here, one home there. So its impact to the grid actually is very minimum. But in the future, if we consider if the entire community built to net zero or net zero ready standard, the energy profile will be much different. And also large solar PV array in our entire community, the impact of those solar PV systems to the grid also will be very different than today's today's townhome communities. So for that, but unfortunately, because of in the past there's no such kind of project, so there's no research on this side. In the current design tools cannot provide the answer to a lot of this type of question. So for that is the purpose of this project. We want to have a thorough study on energy profile of the MERP and how the solar PV generation interact with the energy consumption of the building, and what is the aggregate impact of net zero and net zero energy ready MERP to the grid. Go to next slide, please. Yeah, there are three partners in this project. I work for Landmark Homes. We are mainly lead the project and build the entire community. And another partner is a solar company, and also utility marketer. We Landmark has worked with Solar Max for about in the past 5 years for all our NonZero and highly energy efficient solar home. So Solar Max, they have access to over 200 of rooftop solar PV system. They have the data of the solar generation data. That is important because for this project, we only have probably 11 units. Every unit is equipped with a 2 kilowatt solar PV system. But we want to
Hi, To. If you could just sort of wrap it up, please, that'd be great. Thank you.
Yeah, sure. For that is the last slide already. Yeah. So for that, we will see what is the larger size of the system. What is that impact? So at the end, another partner will be your University of Alberta. So they will mainly do all the work of data collection and also build the energy profile model and simulation tool. Thanks. So that's the end of my presentation. Thank you.
Thanks so much. Sorry to rush you through. We never have enough time for any of these things. Of course, we always load them up. So, but thank you so much for your interesting case study.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, totally okay. So sorry for lose the time tracking.
No worries. So now we're going to turn it over to another presenter. It's Mark Seberano, founder and executive director of Building Up. Mark founded Building Up because he felt it needed to exist. He believes that the role of a social enterprise is to connect people that want to make socially minded purchasing decisions with the opportunity to do so. Mark graduated the Richard Ivey School of Business, canoed across Canada, and understands the untapped transformative powers of construction. I'm going to turn it over to you, Mark, to tell us a little bit about Building Up.
Great. Hi, everyone. So I'm coming to you from Toronto today. That is where Building Up exists. And I think the team that put this on was thinking that, you know, Building Up might be the sort of project that might be eligible for some of the funding. So I'm just going to share what we're all about. Building Up is a nonprofit social enterprise. So what that means is we are a nonprofit business. And really the whole point of our organization is to connect people that are looking for careers that have significant barriers to employment. Maybe they didn't finish high school, they're coming out of prison, they're new to the country, coming from all sorts of diverse communities across the city. And while there's huge communities of these people that are going through that situation in Toronto, there's also a construction industry that is like dying for people, you know, and they need people. So Building Up exists to connect people that are looking for work in the construction industry to employers that are looking for workers. We operate as a social enterprise, meaning that we actually operate our own nonprofit contracting company, and we do renovations and energy efficiency upgrades across the city of Toronto, and use that work experience as a vehicle to train and employ people with barriers to employment, to get them paid, get them learning, and get them some exposure to different trades so that they can kind of understand the industry that we're going to get them into, and then we connect them with those employers. And we also have a whole sort of in-class training portion to the work we do. So people learn their math, they get driver's license, they get hooked up with a social worker, and really help people work through whatever's going on in their lives. So Building Up started with the intention of getting people jobs in the construction industry, and that still is sort of the driving force. But what we've learned over the past, 6-7 years is that as much as there is a skilled labor shortage in construction broadly, there is an even greater shortage in like the green building sector. There's a lot of work that needs to get done, and not as many builders that have the experience and the understanding to be able to do that work. So if we're sort of trying to train the next generation of tradespeople and give people with barriers access to these jobs, we've sort of taken it a step further and said, how can we train people in the future of construction? How can we train people in green building? And a lot of the work that we've taken on as a social enterprise is actually in affordable housing buildings. So, you know, there's a lot of money being invested in building affordable housing, not enough, but you know, there's a lot of affordable housing that needs to be built, and the affordable housing that does exist often needs significant upgrades, even from an energy perspective. And, you know, the standard practice would be hiring a contractor to come in and do the work, but these are towers that are filled with people that are looking for work. So we step in as a contractor that actually trains and employs the people living in affordable housing to do the energy upgrades in their building, so that, you know, like, if you guys are all energy people, it's like not only to stop like the heating or the cold air from leaking out of the building, but also like all the skills and the income that could have been generated on these projects from leaking out of the building, and kind of more the skills even than the income. So in the city of Toronto, ton of buildings with a mix of sort of low-hanging fruit from energy efficiency retrofits like low-flow toilets and shower heads, to more deeper projects that are sort of more in line with, I think, what this project is all about. And there's just a huge need for labor on all these jobs. So we're kind of rebuilding our curriculum to focus not just on normal construction, but also like teaching the principles of green construction in class, and then finding work opportunities through the social enterprise to get people exposed to this work. We're doing a lot of like energy audits for affordable housing providers, learning windows, and another thing that we do is we've actually partnered with an organization called Raising the Roof that takes vacant properties actually right across Canada and turns them into affordable housing. And then because these properties are vacant, they're in terrible shape for the most part. And Raising the Roof has decided to employ Building Up and other organizations across Canada that do similar work as a way to not only sort of prevent homelessness by creating homes, but to prevent homelessness by using the renovations of these properties as a way to get people exposed to the trades and earning an income and learning. So on these homes now, we're doing deep green retrofits on these homes, and people can kind of see the whole process of construction from demolition through finishing of a home, and learn all the building systems that go into it, and like learn every step of the way, because, you know, drywalling is different when you're really trying to protect the barrier that is kind of the building envelope that's sealing the home. So there's all these little tricks that people need to learn throughout the process. And I would say that that's probably, I just see the time ticking away. I think that's probably like a basic description that lines up with the work that is happening in Alberta through this foundation here. So I'll leave it there. I don't know if there's still any time for any questions or anything, but over to you, Mike.
You're super concise, Mark. That's great. No, it was a really good presentation. The model's very, very interesting. And if anyone has any questions for Mark, please put them in the Q&A because he has access to the Q&A box as well. And we'll be able to answer them as we close out the session. So again, really interesting case studies. And again, these are meant to give you some inspiration. You know, there was some, you know, question, you know, some of these projects and these, I guess, particularly in the Landmark case, you know, that's a significant project, and it's a lot of capital associated with it. And, you know, a $50,000 to, you know, even upwards of $100,000, if you were able to get that from the Climate Innovation Fund, would not fully fund a project like that. However, you know, there's pieces of the project that are fundable through the Climate Innovation Fund, and certainly you can pool funds. We wouldn't be a sole funder on that, but we could be a contributor to it. And similar from other large scale projects. So just keep that in mind as well. But anyway, we will start to just sort of facilitate a closeout to the session. I want to thank everyone for attending. It was really great to have such a good turnout. And I want you to know that our grants team is also available for any additional questions that you might have post-session. We are certainly running out of time here, so I don't think we have any ability to do any follow-up questions. But I want to thank the presenters. I want to remind you of that Padlet board as well. If it's not in the chat box right now, there will be another link to it. So I encourage you to go take a look after that. It's also available post-session for you. There is also going to be a survey that we send out along with a recording of the session and a copy of the slides. We really appreciate hearing from you about what you thought of today's session. We do have other sessions that are coming up, so we want to make sure that we continuously improve in what we're doing. Our next session is on the Moving on Mobility focus area. It's May 17th. Our feature speakers will be from the Simon Fraser University's Moving in a Livable Region project and 7 Generation Capital to speak about their fleet conversion fund. For the next webinar, we'll be switching it up a little bit too, and we're going to have the speakers first and the focus area specific information, the grant information, will come after that. This will allow you to attend the other sessions if you're just interested in receiving the information, and then you could leave halfway through once the grant information is being presented, so you don't have to sit through that again. But feel free to come and see it again as well as we improve the content from this session to the next. So with that, thank you so much, and enjoy the rest of your day. And you can get in touch with us directly at grants@albertaecotrust.com if you have specific questions or follow-up questions from today's session. So thanks again, everyone.